Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Your Legislators, a production of KRWG Broadcasting. Your Legislators is a public service program providing our viewing audience in southern New Mexico the opportunity to hear about important legislative issues directly from their elected representatives in Santa Fe.
Hello, I'm Glen Cerny, General Manager of KRWG, and it gives me a great deal of pride as we celebrate our 50th anniversary of broadcasting at KRWG to also kick off our 9th year of presenting Your Legislators, an opportunity for the legislators in our region to talk about what's happening in Santa Fe during the session and bring you up to date on what might be impacting you. And I'm pleased to welcome, I believe for the first time to your legislators, Senator Bill Burt out of Alamogordo, District 33. Welcome to KRWG.
Glenn, thank you very much. The place has changed a little bit since
I should mention an NMSU grad, so I should have said welcome back.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
A quick question. District 33, it's a big state, and even in our coverage area, which is larger than the state of West Virginia, sometimes it's hard to remember exactly where district whatever is. So District 33 roughly encompasses?
District 33 is about 2 to 2.5 hours end to end, quite frankly. It begins in Alamogordo and at 10th Street. And 10th Street, if you know Alamogordo, is kind of divides north and south in Alamogordo. So District 33 goes north in Alamogordo all the way to Carrizozo, you know where the four-way stop is there on the highway. It comes back on the west side of the highway that goes into Ruidoso, but it includes Ruidoso Downs, Hondo Valley, and then actually gets into Chaves County and West Roswell. Union, Sycamore Streets are the boundaries there. So again, covering the full district can take 2.5 hours, depending on which direction you're heading.
I'll tell you how I remember it usually. I think Billy the Kid country.
Yes, yeah, and there's a few aliens on the end there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you want some diversity in
well,
your district.
of course.
Session, it's the long session, so you're packing 3 bags this year instead of the normal 1.
Yes, it's good to have cleaners in Santa Fe because you have to freshen up once in a while. But no, we're looking forward to a 60-day session, and I think the main difference this year, as you well know, the House now, after 62 years, is dominated by the Republican Party. The Senate, which didn't have any elections this last cycle, remains, with 17 Republicans in it. But it's an interesting split on the Senate because there are a lot of conservative-leaning Democrats from rural New Mexico that, depending on the issue, oftentimes vote our direction.
Since you bring up the change in the House with party division, the Senate has, I think, always been considered to be independent thinkers. Is that a good way to put it when dealing with the governor? And it hasn't really mattered if it's a Republican governor or a Democrat governor. The Senate just seems to kind of hold its own. You see that remaining the case?
Well, I think yes, I do. Short answer is yes. I believe it is simply the makeup of the individual personalities on the Senate floor, not from, if you will, an egotistical point of view, but very independent thinkers, folks who are in the Senate, and not unlike the House. There's just more folks in the House that cushion some of that. But the folks in the Senate are opinionated, A-type personalities. They bring their game to the floor and to the committee meetings. They're very strong in their beliefs and how they handle things. And as some of the leadership told me when I first got there a little over 4 years ago, that the administrations come and go, governors come and go, but the institution of the Senate remains. And some folks have a lot of corporate history because they've been there so you have new folks who come on board, some folks have been there for 8, 10, 12, 15 years, and then some folks who've been there for a long period of time. And it's a very nice mix, understanding the history, because I think you have to know history where you've come from before you can really approach where we are today and how we look at the future.
Well, and I think perhaps governors in particular often look at that as being a negative, but there's a reason you have the three houses in the division of power.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's that division of power. You vote on bills through committees and on the floor in the House. It comes over the Senate. We vote on things in the Senate. It goes over to the House. And once the House and the Senate agree either on the pure bill or the amended bill, then it does go to the governor, and she or he has the option to either sign the bill or veto the bill.
The Legislative Finance Committee has put forth a $6.3 billion budget to be voted on. The governor will be countering on that to some degree. Any idea on how close that number may be, or?
I think the overall number is relatively close, as it was last year, by the way. The administration and the legislature were very close on our estimates. And oftentimes it's the difference really is how the money is applied. Sometimes we do from our Legislative Finance Council gives us as much background, and these are a bunch of economists and guys who crunch the numbers on an ongoing basis, look at history and give us their best ideas of where we're headed. Governor has DFA, and of course they do the same thing over there. And again, as we talked earlier about balance of power, I think that is a great solution to the state or asset to the state, because now you can take those two directions and thought processes as how a budget would be built and start to mold those together. So somewhere in the middle we come out with a very good budget and something that hopefully will benefit the state and all the elements that go into the state, and there's so many of those.
And we must mention a required balanced budget as well.
A required balance, that has been on the books since the 70s, as a matter of fact, that we must have a balanced budget, which I think is rather interesting because as this current administration took office, there was a $500 million deficit in the state. So
let's get to the sticky wicket, if you will.
Okay.
Projected of about $140 million of new money, but that number has been fluctuating greatly.
Yes.
On the price of a barrel of oil. I understand that Senator Smith's going to ask for another projection. And I can't ask you if you think it's right, but gut feeling, going to vary much on that?
I am concerned that that's high. I think, a year ago we anticipated about 284 million. We're down to 140 right now. The price of a barrel of oil continues to drop. And I think most folks know that if they track this issue, every time, 30 to 40% of the state's revenue comes out of the oil patch. 30 to 40%. That's, as you know, even with my dimming math, that's a pretty good chunk. And so we watch that very, very closely, because that will dictate how much capital outlay money and funds that we have to take back to our municipalities and counties. And every time a barrel of oil drops $1, the state loses $7 to $7.5 million. So as we saw it, just a few months ago at anywhere from $80 to $90 a barrel, we're down today. New Mexico crude is a little bit less costly than most of the crude around the United States. So we're in the 40s somewhere. That's huge. That'll have a huge impact. Now, predictions are, and I've heard several of them, that the predictions will, this year the crude will stabilize somewhere in the area of $60 to $66 a barrel. That's, again, all guesstimation, if you will, and we don't know for sure. But I am a little concerned at the $141 million, but I think DFA and Finance Council all put this on the table and have to have a target that we shoot from. But I am concerned that may drop some.
Well, and there's a barb on that hook too, and that as the oil prices go down, the exploration, the incentive to look for new wells starts to decrease. And when you look at artesian hobs, that's a huge driver.
Well, anytime the oil patch is such a huge industry. Anytime one element in that industry changes, there is that domino or ripple effect. Most of what we've seen in the last, especially couple of years, has been new exploration, new wells drilled, and as you get to know more about this process over on the eastern part of the state, every time you drill a well and you start making production, the first initial pump out of that oil well is very, very productive. It's like something that's waiting to burst out, and that's exactly what happens. So it's very prolific, it flows very well, and then as the pressure goes down a little bit, then you settle into, after weeks or months, the stabilization of that particular well and where that comes from. The importance is, over the last 2 or 3 years, because we've seen so much production, is because they have drilled so many new wells over there. So that burst is coming out initially, and that's where we're getting such great productivity. Now, if you take that, and let's just say we cut drilling new wells in half, and I'm not saying that's exactly the number we're at, but let's say we drill half those wells, the productivity goes greatly down. First off, you don't have as many roughnecks, you're not drilling as many wells, so you lose jobs there. Communities like Hobbs, Carlsbad, Artesia, all those small communities all depend on those oil workers. They come in, they buy food, they buy clothing, entertainment, whatever that they do. And so the ripple effect continues to happen. Oil prices go down, and also oil companies don't put as much money into those issues. So again, the dominoes start to fall. Less people working, less activity, less production, and so less money coming out in the form of tax.
Staying with the economic development, there's been 2 pieces of legislation. I'm going to look at my notes here to make sure LEDA is what it's known as, but it's the Local Economic Development Act and the deal closing funds. And we saw some of the issues in trying to attract business, especially on the southwestern part of the state with the Tesla battery factory that was going in. Did you see any more discussion on that type of legislation, and is it working the way that you think it had hoped?
I think any time that you can add incentive to attract industry to the state of New Mexico, I think that's a good idea. If the incentive makes sense, from a financial aspect. We're surrounded by states that have larger populations, and some may debate, may have a little more progressive or current tax structure, may have different incentives and a larger pool to draw from to attract industries into the state. That's not to say that New Mexico doesn't have a great job pool, but we would like that job pool to be better. And I think one of the things that you possibly can do is to continue to support this, and I don't see those funds going down. I think they probably will increase to a certain extent. I know in Alamogordo, some years ago, we had 1-800-Flowers come into the marketplace, create about 300 to 400 jobs. Many people applying for jobs were capable of doing the job, except they didn't have the typing skills for the computer. So working with New Mexico State University Alamogordo, Deborah Teachman over there created a compressed 2-week class where people could come in and take the class and improve their skills. And I think over 60% of those folks went back, reapplied, or took that certificate of finish from that class and did in fact get a job at 1-800-Flowers. So and that had to do with JTIP funds, on the job training type funds that goes to the employer to supplement training of people who come into the workplace for industries coming into the state of New Mexico. And it's available to just about everybody if you create new divisions or a subsidy company. You can certainly apply for some of those funds to help buffer that initial startup cost.
When I was looking through questions for this interview, I was joking with the crew here. I'm willing to bet that if I took this list and compared it to 9 years ago when I was started doing this program, that some of them are going to be identical, and I can guarantee you one is, and you talked a little bit in an educated workforce, but education. And the governor has made it very clear that she's put education front and center.
Yes. education is critically important to the governor. She has a great game plan, in my opinion. We want to continue moving forward on that. To be quite honest, her selection for Secretary of Education, Hannah Scandera, has certainly drawn a lot of fire from folks. Ms. Scandera has come in and tried to create some new directions in education within the state of New Mexico, and you can certainly debate whether they're right, wrong, or good or bad for the state. But now that we're 6 years into this, I think that, or 4 years into this, I think we're starting to see improvements in areas that include better graduation rates. Maybe test scores in certain areas are getting better. And I think that the bottom line is, for me, that we're losing kids. There's a lot of discussion about social promotion, and we get into the discussion of first through third grades, you learn to read. Beginning in fourth grade, you should have certain abilities in reading so that then you can read to learn. And I personally subscribe to that. I think that's a fair estimation. Of course, every kid is different. Not going to be exactly right in that game plan. Whether you agree with social promotion or not, the bottom line is we have got to do a better job teaching our kids basics, reading, writing, and math skills, so that we can be more competitive with not just folks around us in other states, but this country has got to be more competitive with the rest of the world when it comes to issues like that, because we're going to fall behind.
Can I put you on the spot a little bit, because you mentioned Secretary Scandera still carries the interim.
Yes.
You also have a new higher education director in Barbara Dameron. Are those going to come to the Senate floor and get voted on?
Well, for 4 years they have had multiple meetings and discussions about the Secretary Scandera appointment, and to the point where not last year but year before, we actually had 2 days, I believe, on the Senate floor. They actually came out of the committee room because there were so many people who needed to discuss this issue, and brought it to the Senate floor, which is a much larger operation, or capacity, has a much larger capacity, and discussed the pros and cons of what people feel about the Secretary designate. Then at the end of the session, she was never brought up to a vote in the rules. Now, just as a sidebar, the way people are brought up, the governor appoints people to these positions. They have to be vetted through the Senate Rules Committee, and then if they pass, then they come to the Senate for final approval for a majority vote there. Last year, during a committee meeting, when, and I will say to this point, part of the reason, my understanding, I'm not on rules, the reason that Secretary Scandera was not brought to a vote is because up until that point, they believed that she would get confirmed out of rules, which would bring her to the floor, and there was somewhat general belief that she would probably get confirmed off of the floor of the Senate. The committee chair for rules waited for a day when one of the folks that they believed would vote in favor of the secretary could not come to the committee because of illness or family commitment or something, and they brought her to a vote, and it became a 4-4 split on the committee. So what happens at that point is she has been voted on, it's a 4-4 split, so she continues as secretary designate, has basically all the power and does all the things that a confirmed secretary would have, but she doesn't have the official title as yet. Will she come back up this year? I can't tell you that. I don't know if they will try and bring her back for confirmation or not. And I think Ms. Dameron certainly will be vetted this, as closely as anyone else, and especially for very important positions such as higher education. And I don't know if Ms. Dameron will create as much discussion as Secretary-designate Scandera has. But there will be a lot of discussion. But I would venture to guess that she will come to the Rules Committee, get a vote, and come to the floor for confirmation, hopefully before the year is out.
Well, there's another designee that I think is very important for your district, and that's tourism with Ruidoso and the space activity in Alamogordo, and then the aliens that you already mentioned. That we want to make sure tourists are going to be welcomed when they come to New Mexico. Are you looking for any activity in that front?
Yes. I will tell you first off, kudos to Monique Jacobson. She is a lady who is up till now has been, well, until she's confirmed, has been the Secretary of Tourism. She came to the state and she did, in my opinion, the right thing. We're in an industry that lives and dies on research, as you know. And so she did a lot of focus groups. She went to target states, put focus groups together, and got feedback from those folks to really understand what people thought in general about the state of New Mexico. And then she took that, and that's the key to research, is how to take that research and apply it back to get better results out of your activities. She did just that. And tourism is up in double-digit figures, I think, all over the state. We continue to put more money into tourism. It's a great industry, and for me, in many cases, that opens the door. If you come here and visit and you love the state like most of us do who live here, then you think a little bit more down the road about, wow, I could actually move my company here and set up shop and do things. And so it does open the door also to new businesses and industries and individuals moving to the state. So she's going to create a big void as she moves over to CYFD as the secretary, which is a very large part of the government, healthcare department of the government.
And very controversial.
And very
at this
controversial
juncture, too.
And very important too, because you're dealing with children and families. And as you know, the family unit over the last 2 or 3 decades has really disintegrated from probably what you and I remembered as during our day. But I will say that the new tourism director is coming out of, I believe, Angel Fire up in the northern part of the state, has done a very good job up there, and we certainly anticipate Monique Jacobson giving her a handoff and some help in what she's doing there, and we expect for the tourism department to continue to grow and produce new folks coming into the state.
Now I'm going to start rapid firing some stuff here as we get close to wrapping up. Capital outlay plans. Again, we've talked about that the money, we really aren't sure what's there, but one of the issues is how much is each senator going to get, how much is each representative, how much is the governor going to get, how much is going to go to state planning. Any feel on where that's going to end up settling?
I don't know for sure, and I think that's why we're going to have some. In the very beginning of the legislative session, we'll have a lot of finance meetings concerning where we're at to come to that better estimate as to what kind of money we'll be looking at. I know that initially we're going to start with that $141 million budget, but I think we may be losing some money on that. Capital outlay really comes back into the communities to help on projects that the counties and municipalities can't completely afford to do. And there's a lot of discussion, is this the right way to do it or not, and I'm not really going to debate that right now, but I will say it really helps out communities. Last year, every senator who theoretically represents about 49,500 people in the state of New Mexico got $1.155 million to bring back to their areas to work. I think each House of Representatives member got $600,000 or something like that. What we do, for example, in my district, I will sit down and I will meet all the folks in Alamogordo, Carrizozo, and Otero County and figure out what the needs are there. And that, Otero makes up about 50% of my district. So I kind of take about 50% of my capital outlay and believe I should apply it there because that's the way my district is done. Then I will go up to Lincoln County. I'll meet with Phil Grego, who is the other senator that handles a lot of Lincoln County, and Zach Cook, who's the representative there, and a few other people who may touch those counties a little bit. And we'll have a discussion about where the priorities are, what we think that we can do, how best we can apply that money to get the most mileage out of it. And then we do the same thing in Chavez County with Roswell and those surrounding communities and apply the proper amount of money over there as best we possibly can. It's not a great system, but it works, and the most important thing is capital outlay comes to the communities that really need some help. I will also tell you that oftentimes in the last 4 years that I've been going through this process, about 80% of the requests somehow deal with water. As you know, water in New Mexico is, you can talk oil prices, you can talk tourism, you can talk health care, but nothing makes any sense at all unless you have water.
Spend 2 minutes with Representative Nunez on water, and you're going to learn everything you need to know, can't you? Not the solutions, but
Andy is so knowledgeable, you know, because he has so much touch into the agricultural community and knows it very well. And there are a lot of very smart people in the legislature and the support staffs who track water issues in the state. Very complex issues because we have conservation districts, we have water districts, we have individual rights, we have states' rights to certain water.
It's a complicated.
And sometimes you have to attempt to blend those together.
We got about 30 seconds left. I know you're going to have your fingers crossed as you drive up to Santa Fe. If I talk to you at the end of March, what do you hope to accomplish for your district in this session?
Again, we want to look at helping the communities as best we possibly can. If we have some capital outlay, we'll do that. I am very heavily involved in Veterans Affairs and active duty military. You know, the Department of Defense has a huge investment in the state of New Mexico. Billions and billions of dollars in annual income to the state of New Mexico, probably 20 to 25,000 civilian employees in this state. And where most federal dollars are going down, federal dollars will continue to pump into our 4.5 bases, and I consider Fort Bliss, which does about 80% of their business in Otero County, a half of that process here in the state. So we'll be looking at helping those issues as well.
Please know our fingers are crossed with yours as we move across.
Thank you
Senator,
so much
thanks
for the time.
No, and thank you for taking the time. This has been Your Legislators. We certainly hope you'll join us each week during the session to be brought up to date on what is going on in Santa Fe and the Roundhouse. I'm Glen Cerny. Thank you for watching.